close your eyes for a second. I'm serious, just for a moment. I want you to feel something before we begin. Think about the last time you stood at the edge of a forest at night. The way the darkness between the trees doesn't feel empty. The way it feels occupied. That instinct, that primitive animal fear of what might be watching from the dark, that is not paranoia. That is memory, genetic memory, 13 million years old. Because there was a time, a real time, written in fossilized bone and compressed sediment, when something in that darkness was watching you. And it was not afraid. There are places on this earth that breathe life. And then, there are places that suffocate it. We look at the modern Amazon and see a green paradise, a lung for the planet, a place of color and noise and extraordinary life. Something beautiful, something that, from a distance, feels almost safe. But I need you to peel that image back, layer by layer, past the river dolphins, past the macaws, past the leafcutter ants and the poison dart frogs. Keep going further back. I want you to go back 13 million years. The air is thicker, not uncomfortable, oppressive, like breathing through hot cloth. The water is darker, not murky, black, the kind of black that has depth and weight and intention. And the silence is the most dangerous sound you will ever hear. Because silence here doesn't mean nothing is happening. Silence here means every creature within half a mile has gone completely still. And the only reason every creature goes completely still is because something at the top of the food chain just moved. This was not a forest. This was an arena, a cathedral of violence built from water and heat and 13 million years of isolation. Welcome to the Miocene killing floor. The world, understanding the cage. Before we meet the monsters, and we will meet them one by one, you need to understand the world that built them. Because monsters don't appear from nothing. They are always a product of their environment. And this environment was unlike anything before or since. The Amazon we know today, the river, the basin, the vast network of tributaries that drains half a continent, that didn't exist yet. None of it. What existed in its place was the Pebas Megawetland. Say that name again. Let it sit. Pebas. A continent-sized system of swamps, shallow inland seas, and flooded forest that covered what is now Peru, Colombia, Brazil, and Bolivia. An area larger than the entire Mediterranean Sea, but instead of salt water and coastlines, picture black water and ancient trees and the constant rhythmic sound of things moving through the shallows. The heat was not like a summer day. It was structural. It was permanent. It sat on top of everything like a second atmosphere. The humidity was a physical force, not discomfort, weight, the kind of weight that presses behind your eyes. And here's the detail that changes everything, the detail that explains why what evolved here was so different from anything else on Earth. South America was an island, completely cut off from North America, from Africa, from Europe, from every other landmass on the planet, for millions upon millions of years. Evolution, when it is connected to other systems, gets regulated. Animals migrate, predators travel, competition keeps things in check. There are natural limits. But here, in this sealed, superheated, waterlogged isolation chamber, there were no limits. No outside competition, no invasion of foreign predators, no reset button. Nature ran an unchecked experiment. The question on the table was simple and terrifying. How large, how powerful, how utterly lethal can a predator become before the entire ecosystem collapses under the weight of its own violence? The creatures that lived here were not the answer to that question. They were the question still being asked in real time. Section 1. The Deceptive Giants. We start somewhere unexpected. Not with the apex predators, not with the things that hunt. We start with something that looks, on the surface, almost gentle. Because this world will teach you very quickly the most dangerous deception is the one that doesn't look like a threat. The Megatherium, the giant sloth. Go ahead, say the word sloth and let your brain do what it always does. Picture something slow, something drowsy, something that hangs from a branch and blinks at you like it has forgotten what urgency feels like. Now, throw that image away entirely. The Megatherium stood 4 meters tall on its hind legs, not 4 feet, 4 meters. That is taller than most ceilings you have ever stood under. It weighed as much as a bull African elephant. Every single pound of that weight was not fat, it was muscle, dense, layered muscle wrapped inside a hide so thick that paleontologists believe most predators of the era couldn't reliably penetrate it, not with their teeth, not with their claws. It was functionally a living tank. And the claws. We need to talk about the claws. Each claw was roughly the length of a human forearm, curved like butcher hooks, designed primarily for ripping apart trees, pulling down branches to reach leaves that nothing else could access. But biomechanical analysis of the shoulder joint, the torque it could generate, the angle of the swing, tells a different story when it is applied to something that isn't a tree. Those claws, swung with the full rotational force of an animal that size, would not cut, they would not slash, they would obliterate. The Megatherium is the Miocine's first lesson. In this place, even the herbivores were weapons. Even the animals that ate leaves were built to survive or end a fight with anything on the continent. Beside it walked the Australopitherium, the lightning beast. If the Megatherium was the tank, the Australopitherium was the battering ram. Picture a creature assembled by someone who had heard a description of several different animals, but never seen any of them. Part rhino in structure, part hippo in mass, part elephant in the elongated snout that ended in a flexible trunk-like appendage, tusks that jutted forward like biological lances. Here is what makes it remarkable. Those tusks never stopped growing, and they ground against each other with every movement of the jaw, which means they were constantly, passively sharpening themselves. Every time the Australopitherium ate, every time it yawned, every time it moved its mouth at all, the tusks got sharper. It was not a predator by nature, but in a world where even the plants had thorns and even the water had teeth, being a peaceful herbivore was not a lifestyle, it was a liability. Size was the only insurance policy that paid out in this ecosystem. Section 2. The Butchers of the Plains. But size could not outrun speed. The rain stops. Just like that. Mid-downpour, silence. The jungle, which was never quiet, goes absolutely still. That is a sound, the sound of sudden, total silence that no modern human has ever heard in a forest like this. And if you heard it here in the Miocene, you would not stop to appreciate it. Your body would make a decision for you. Run. But running would not save you. The Purussaurus. History gave them the name terror birds, a name that is accurate but insufficient, a name that describes what they look like, not what they do. What they do is hunt with an efficiency that makes modern apex predators look wasteful. Picture an ostrich. You've seen an ostrich. You know it is large, you know it is fast, you know it has a kick that can break a man's leg. That is an ostrich at roughly 2 meters tall, with no predatory instinct and no killing apparatus. Now, take that template and rebuild it for a single purpose. 3 meters tall, dense, muscular legs built for acceleration, not endurance, because it doesn't need to chase you far. The chest of something built for short, explosive violence, and a beak the size of a hatchet head attached to a skull designed to swing downward with the force of a wrecking ball. These birds did not peck, they did not grab and shake. They ran. They closed the distance to 0, and then they raised their head and drove that skull downward with every gram of force their body could generate, directly into the spine. One strike, practiced, surgical, absolute. The prey animal was dead before it fully understood what had happened.
They were the living heirs to the theropod dinosaurs, the lineage of Tyrannosaurus and Velociraptor, still operating 65 million years after the mass extinction that was supposed to end that bloodline. Still at the top, still perfecting the craft. But the terror birds had competition. Moving through the tall grass at the edges of the wetland, low and quiet and utterly patient, was the Smilodon populator, the king of bleeders. The saber-toothed cat of South America was not the one from the posters, not the lean North American predator that is the mascot of the Ice Age. This was the populator, the southern variant, and it was substantially larger, heavier in the shoulders, wider in the chest, built with a center of gravity that said one thing clearly: I am not here to run, I am here to hold. Its hunting strategy was not the sprint and bite of a cheetah, it was a wrestling match. It would stalk, ambush, and use those enormous forelimbs, arms that could generate more rotational torque than a modern lion, to pin its prey completely to the ground, immovable, helpless, aware of exactly what was happening. And then, not a crush, not a snap, a placement. The canines, positioned precisely over the neck, slid between the vertebrae and opened the carotid arteries. The Smilodon then stepped back and waited, because it didn't need to do anything else. In the tall grass of the Miocene plains, the last sound many animals ever experienced was the wet, rhythmic diminishing of their own pulse. Slow, inevitable, final. Section 3. The Armored. In a world defined by teeth and claws and speed and ambush, some lineages made a different calculation entirely. If you cannot outrun what wants to kill you, make it impossible for anything to kill you. The Stupendemys geographicus, the bone fortress. The word turtle will mislead you here. What you picture when you hear turtle, that small, slow, charming thing you might find crossing a garden path, has no relationship to the Stupendemys. This animal was nearly 3 meters long. The shell alone was the size of a family sedan. Not metaphorically, paleontologists have used that comparison in peer-reviewed literature because it is the most accurate frame of reference available. The shell was so thick that it has been recovered from fossil sites structurally intact after 13 million years of geological pressure, 13 million years of being buried under the weight of successive rock layers, and it was still whole. The shell became its own microenvironment. Mosses and algae colonized the surface, smaller animals sheltered in its shadow. In the murky Pebas waters, a motionless Stupendemys at the surface was, to anything looking down from above, simply a large, slightly irregular island of vegetation. An ecosystem wearing an ecosystem as a disguise. Its cousin, the Carbonemys cofrini, the cold turtle, was smaller but considerably more dangerous.
The Carbonemys did not have the Stupendemys' mass. What it had instead was a skull proportionally enormous for its body, the size of a rugby ball, and a jaw architecture that generated crushing force comparable to the largest crocodilians of the era. It ate things it probably shouldn't have been able to eat: mollusks, fish, other reptiles, smaller turtles. This was a predator that had chosen to wear its defense on its back and its offense in its face. The Miocene Amazon had a simple, ruthless economy. You were the hammer, or you were the anvil. And in 13 million years of evolution in complete isolation, even the animals we associate with passivity and slowness had made their choice. Every single one of them had chosen to be the hammer. Section 4. The River. The finale. Everything we have discussed, the giant sloth, the lightning beast, the terror bird, the saber-tooth, the armored titans, they were the living shoreline. They were guests at the edge of something they entered only when they had no other choice. The water was different. The water had its own rules, its own hierarchy, its own darkness. And the things that lived in the water did not come to the shore out of fear. They came to the shore to feed. The water surface goes still. Not calm, still. There is a difference. Calm is the absence of disturbance. Still is what happens when something below the surface stops moving. And then it begins. A shape, moving from the left side of your vision to the right. Long. Still going. Still going. Still going. Titanoboa cerahonensis, the god of chokes. 13 meters from nose to tail. That's longer than a city bus. That's longer than most rooms in most buildings you've ever been inside. It weighed over 1,000 kilograms, heavier than a giraffe, heavier than a car. And it moved through the water in absolute silence. After the extinction event that ended the dinosaurs, the rock 66 million years ago that changed everything, the Titanoboa was the largest predator that had ever existed on the surface of this planet. Not the largest aquatic predator, not the largest land predator. The largest predator, full stop. 2 beats. Contrast. It did not use venom. That would have been too easy, too passive. It used physics. 400 pounds per square inch of constriction force. To give you a reference point, the crushing pressure of an industrial hydraulic press used to shape metal components operates in a similar range. The Titanoboa generated that pressure with its body. Here is how it worked. Here is what made it so specifically, carefully, architecturally cruel. It did not squeeze uniformly. It timed the constriction to your breathing. When you exhaled, when your rib cage contracted, it tightened. Just enough, just to fill the space your lungs had just vacated. And when you tried to inhale, when you tried to expand your chest to draw air, the coils were already there, already occupying the space your lungs needed. Breath by breath, the available space got smaller. Breath by breath, the window between exhale and the ability to inhale got narrower, until it closed entirely. The Titanoboa turned the act of breathing, the most fundamental, involuntary act of being alive, into a battle you were mathematically guaranteed to lose. But here is the thing about gods. Even they can be eaten. The surface of the water does not ripple. It doesn't ripple because there is no time for a ripple. There is only the explosion. Purussaurus brasilensis, the river guillotine. 12 meters of caiman, a relative of the modern crocodile, built not for speed, not for ambush, not for patience and precision, built for one thing: absolute, unconditional dominance of any water it entered. The skull of a Purussaurus was over 1.5 meters long. The bone density of that skull was extraordinary, not because the animal needed protection, but because the forces generated by its own jaw would have destroyed a less reinforced structure. 7 tons of bite force. Not 700 pounds, not even 700 kilograms. 7 metric tons. Twice the estimated bite force of Tyrannosaurus rex, the single most powerful bite force ever recorded or estimated for any animal in the history of life on this planet. When a jaw generating 7 tons of force closes on something, and I want you to sit with the physics of this for a moment, there is no material, biological or otherwise, that does not immediately and completely yield. Bone becomes powder. Shell becomes shards. The distinction between inside and outside a body ceases to be relevant. The Titanoboa was patience. It was the slow philosophy of inevitable compression, a god of quiet deaths in dark water. Purussaurus was the opposite of every one of those things. It was the philosophy of, I am here, and nothing that is also here survives my being here.
Both of them ruled the Pebas. Neither of them tolerated the other gracefully. The river kept the score. So I will leave you with the question that the Miocene itself never resolved. In a direct encounter between the god of chokes and the river guillotine in the black water of the ancient Amazon, who walks away? Tell us in the comments. We genuinely want to know. Section 5, the extinction. So how does a world like this end? How does something this powerful, this layered, this specifically and terrifyingly calibrated simply stop? The answer is not dramatic. It is not another mass extinction event. There is no asteroid, no volcanic winter, no single catastrophic moment. The answer is geology. Slow, patient, indifferent geology. The Andes Mountains began to rise, not quickly. Over millions of years, the tectonic compression that built the spine of South America pushed the land upward centimeter by centimeter. But the cumulative effect was devastating. As the Andes grew, they altered the drainage patterns of the entire continent. The Pebas wetland, the cage that had built these monsters, the superheated isolation chamber where evolution had run its unchecked experiment, began to drain. Westward drainage was blocked by the rising mountains. The water found the only path available, east toward the Atlantic. And as it drained, it carved. It carved what we now call the Amazon River, the greatest river system on Earth, formed from the collapse of the greatest predator ecosystem in Earth's history. The arena shrank. And when the arena shrank, the math changed. A Titanoboa needs an enormous caloric intake to maintain a body that size. A Purussaurus needs territory and prey density that only the Pebas could provide. A Megatherium, a Smilodon, a terror bird, all of them had been calibrated for a world that was now receding beneath them. The cost of being a titan became unsustainable, not because something killed them, but because the world that justified their existence simply drained away. The frequency of death that had defined this place for millions of years faded into a lower hum, and then into silence. The Amazon today is extraordinary. It is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. It is fragile and irreplaceable and extraordinary. And it is a shadow
a beautiful, green, breathing shadow of something that was once a cathedral of violence, so complete, so total, so magnificently, terribly alive that nothing before or since has come close to it. You walk through the modern Amazon and you hear birds. You see the river moving quietly past you. You feel the heat pressing down. And somewhere underneath you, in the compressed sediment, in the fossil beds, in the riverbed where the bones of Purussaurus and Titanoboa are still being recovered by paleontologists in rubber boots, one fragment at a time, the giants are still there. The Pebas drained, the mountains rose, the arena closed, but the bones remember what the water was.